Today I'm diving into everything that I plan on accomplishing this summer. So if that's something that piques your interest, grab a cup of something and let's dive in. Welcome back, friends. If you're new here, welcome. My name is Melissa. I'm the owner and dyer behind Rising Tide Fiber Company. And today I'm going to be talking a little bit about what I am hoping to accomplish this summer. Some of you may, if you watched my last couple of videos, you know that there is a new puppy in the house. Daisy is right here next to me in her crate. I'm kind of holding the bone while she chews it. So the first pattern that I'd like to take on this summer is called the Take Turns Tank by Lily Kate France. I have never done a Lily Kate France pattern before, but it's my understanding that she writes a really nice, clean pattern, which for me is ideal. So this one actually calls for sport weight yarn, and it is meant to be worn with, it looks like, some negative ease. Yes, with around 4 inches of negative ease. I don't know if I'm going to do quite as much negative ease, but I do plan on trying to do it as written. Now, this pattern, when it first came out, was a tank that was all solid and it had this like boucle striping in the upper back. She has since gone back to rewrite it so that it is a solid color with individual striping throughout it. And that's the version of it that I'm really interested in completing. So for me, I have for the last several years wanted to try Kelborn's Mojave yarn, and it's not a Kelborn yarn that my local yarn shop carried. So I went ahead and ordered some from Wool and Company. Now, they did email me and say, hey, Melissa, the dye lots are different. They had 3 in one and 2 in another, and I can tell because the labels are different. But when I look at the yarn itself, I don't see much, if any, difference. This is going to be my main color. This is Seafoam Green. It's color 333. Now, this yarn is, again, sport weight, and it is made of 60% cotton and 40% linen. So surprisingly, even with such a high linen content and being 100% plant fibers in general, it actually is not too rough. It's actually pretty smooth, though I could see where this would be a little drying. So the Seafoam Green is what I picked for my main color. For my contrast color, or for my stripes, I've picked this corally color, and it is color 669, and it is flamingo pink. So this, I think it's gonna be a really great color that's gonna definitely pop and contrast with that seafoam green. Now, again, this is a sport weight pattern, so it's calling for a gauge of 24 inches and 36 rows for 4 inches. I've never worked with this yarn before, so I'm definitely going to need to swatch. I did buy enough yarn to lengthen it because I'm not particularly keen on where it's hitting the model in the photograph. And so I should have plenty of yarn to do a simple swatch and just block it and see how it reacts and see how I get. It's using a US 4 and a US 3, which is a 3.25 millimeter and 3.5 millimeter needle. So it's not tiny, it's not super tiny needles. I'm assuming the size 3 is for the like the armhole, like the ribbing at the armholes. And so sport weight on a 4, that's a pretty decent needle size. I should be able to get through it fairly quickly. You do work through this so it's worked seamlessly from the top down, always a good time for me. And you cast on across the back shoulders, working short rows to kind of shape that neck area. Then you're going to work back and forth to the underarms, and then you pick up stitches along to the cast on edges to complete the front shoulders and the upper body. So I just need to swatch, and then I can cast this on fairly quickly. I love the sporty nature of the look of this tank top. I also like that it's just really clean lines. It has a folded over hem at the bottom. So that's kind of intriguing to me, but we'll see what I do when we get to the hem, because again, I'm going to lengthen mine a little bit. I think that it's just not quite long enough for my liking. I like things to hit just a little bit lower. But we'll see. But this is the yarn. I'm excited to try this. Believe it or not, this yarn is kind of hard to find. And I'm not even sure if Cowl is continuing to make this. Again, I found it at Woolen Company. They had great, like I said, great customer service. They called out, they emailed me right away to let me know about the dye lot issue. But again, I'm not seeing a dye lot issue. I guess maybe I will when I look at it on camera. I mean, there's a slight, but with the striping, I think I can alternate between the two dye lots in between my contrasting colors. So I just told them that because it was a stripes tank, I didn't really think that it was going to be an issue for me. Now, the second project that I would really like to accomplish this summer, I'm torn. And they're very similar projects. It's just a matter of, do I want one that I can only wear in the wintertime, or do I want one that's a little bit more versatile? And so let's start with the first one. The first one is the Fleetwood by Tanis Lavallee of Tanis Fiber Arts. This is a pattern that came out in February of 2024. I have been in love with this pattern since she released it. You crochet the granny squares and then you knit the sweater. So I could totally crochet. I'm not a big fan of it per se, but I can totally do it. And I have been looking for a way to use all four colors that I dyed up for each of my dogs. So these are the four colors that represent like their personalities. And so I've wanted to use them in a project together. And so in order to do that, I needed something that they played nicely together with. And so I thought if I used them in the granny square portions and then did, say, this colorway, this really neutral, but with still some speckles in it, if I did this as my main color, that would kind of nicely tie everything up. I've looked at the project pages on Ravelry to see what other main colors, because Tanis obviously used a bare yarn for hers and her colors just pop. But she also used solid colors. Hers is beautiful, but she stuck with some primary colors. So I'm just not sure. This is the one that I'm most in love with. But I will say that you do the granny squares, it looks like in DK, but then the sweater itself is done in worsted, is what it's looking like. You use a size F crochet hook, so decent crochet hook, and then any ribbing you're using a US 6, a 4mm, but the body of the sweater and like the sleeves, you're using a size 8. So the body part of the sweater is worsted weight yarn, which I'm fine with, but I do live in the Mid-Atlantic region. I live in Maryland, so we don't get a lot of winter that requires a worsted weight sweater. Like DK is pretty comfortable the whole entire year. So that's the part about this sweater that does make me nervous. And I know I could probably stick with DK and do the whole body, but Tanis is a really proficient designer, so there's a reason, and I'm sure once I buy the pattern, the reason will be well explained as to why she used worsted for the knitted part versus DK for the whole entire thing. So that's my first thought, is to do that one. And it's got a gauge of 20 stitches by 24 in 24 rows in 4 inches. She used superwash yarn. I would use superwash yarn. So I think everything will behave nicely. And this is my yarn. So I don't have to do a ton of swatching because I already know what my knitting is like with my own yarn. That being said, the worsted weight sweater does make me a little bit nervous. So she just came out in April with another crochet / knitting pattern, and it's called the Geddy tee. And so this one only has 4 squares on the shoulders. So it's a saddle shoulder sweater, and it calls for DK weight yarn through the whole entire thing. It has a split hem. It's super cute. But my thing is if I do this version, I am not going to use DK weight wool for the sweater itself. I would probably switch to a 50-50 wool cotton blend, because dang, a short sleeve DK weight sweater, again, I'm in the Mid-Atlantic region, so it is sweltering in the summertime. So short sleeves in wool, that only gives me so much. That gives me very little time to actually wear the sweater. So if I made it in the 50% wool, 50% cotton, then I could wear the sweater in the summertime. I'm just not sure if I love the look of this one as much as I love the look of the Fleetwood. So I would love to know what your thoughts are. Which one do you think I should I do the Fleetwood and stick with the one that I fell in love with and that I really love the look of? Or should I go with the Geddy because that's the one that's most versatile for me from a seasonal perspective, and change up that yarn for the body so I could get more months out of it? I know some of you are going to tell me I should just do both, and that is not off the table. I will tell you that is not off the table, but I would definitely like to get started with one of those because again, I want to use these 4 colorways. So we started with Lyric. Lyric is my oldest one. This is Lyric Love. This is an older skein out of my stash. So it's blue. It's like blues and aquas and greens and pinks and reds and golds. And then we move on to Petal and Legend were, I call them the twins, but they are my next 2. This is Petal Power and this is Luck of Legend. Petal is quite spicy. She's a high energy dog, but super loving. Legend is mellow, chill. He is everything. I mean, he lives up to his name. I had male dogs that past, and I had one that was like the perfect dog. Like everybody loved him. And so legend has kind of lived up to that. And then Paisley, who is sleeping in a crate off to the side here. This is Paisley Pearl. And she is just as spicy as Petal, but this is a new color. It's purples with flecks of pink and green and bright purple and some of those golden hues. Now, I think both of these patterns call for a 5-color granny square. Obviously, I only have 4. I did do a charity colorway for a foster dog that I had who has since passed, but Norman's Justice is a color that is gray with flecks of blues and golds. It's not bright and poppy like these are. So I thought I would just do the 5th round in the neutral color that I would be doing the square in. But that's still kind of up in the air. I also don't know all of the, a lot of people used solid colors for those granny squares, and I'm using all speckly colors. So I would be curious to, one, I have to figure out the layout of how I'm going to lay these, what sequence I'm going to do these in. I think it's going to look great. I think it's going to look lovely. But I kind of need to play around. So even if I don't make a decision on which sweater to do, I can certainly start a granny square. Like I could buy both patterns, start a granny square and kind of play around, see what I like. Because no matter which one I do, I'm almost 100% certain that I will do all the granny squares the same versus rearranging the different colors. So, excuse me, I would love to know which you think I should do. And then the other pattern that I would like to do, because if I'm doing a tank top and I'm doing a sweater / or a tee, those are 2 bigger projects. One is sport, one is DK / maybe worsted. And quite honestly, I think crocheting granny squares, that would probably go fairly quickly for me. I mean, I might be a little rusty with starting my granny square, but once I get going, once I get 1 or 2 done, the rest will just fly. I tend to be a looser crocheter, so I may have to change my hook size. I'm not sure if she has, I don't think she has a gauge. Oh, she just tells you what the granny square should measure. So I guess she does kind of have a gauge. So I might have to adjust my hook size because I do think like with granny squares, I tend to be a little bit looser. So those would be 2 big projects, and it's already like almost the end of June. So it's like the end of June, beginning of July. So I am starting to think about like, what else could I work on that's relatively small? And so I have been wanting to do one of Andrea Mowry's, either the Traveler's Cowl or the Traveler's Shawl. I lean towards the shawl because I like big and cozy, but I don't really use shawls. But I think if I had a Traveler's Cowl, then I would be more apt to put it on and actually wear it. I would love to do one in Feederbrook Farm out of Baltimore County. I love Lisa's colorways. I've never used Spin Cycle. There is a colorway from Juncture Fiber Mill that I really liked. But I would need, I think, 3 of those skeins. And I'm just not really interested in necessarily spending almost $100 for a cowl. So I'm thinking of of my own colorways so that I could also use it as a sample. So I'm kind of debating on what I'm going to use. And I went through some of the pattern pages. I mean, there's close to 1,500 of them listed on Ravelry. So I did peruse some, and I did see someone holding a strand of suri and a strand of fingering together. And I'm a huge fan of suri and fingering going together, in which case I only need maybe two skeins of suri and one strand of fingering. So I'm kind of thinking about what can I work with there. You can technically use anything because it's meant to go with any gauge. Her gauge is 21 stitches and 40 rows per 4 inches after blocking. And this comes in 5 different sizes: a toddler, youth, adult small, and adult large. That's only 4 sizes. The math teacher can't count today. So she does give some approximations for DK, fingering, sport, and worsted, it looks like. Well, she tells you DK weight, and then if you want to change it to fingering or sport or worsted, she kind of tells you how many additional grams you need of each. And she used handspun for hers. I don't have any handspun, and right now with a brand new puppy, the last thing I want to pull out is my spinning wheel. Right now I'm in that phase of teaching her not to like chomp down on the yarn when I'm knitting it. So I don't think, let's wait till she's a little bigger before I bring out the spinning wheel and introduce her to that concept. So I'm thinking maybe a tweed DK or again a suri held with a fingering. But what I use is kind of still up in the air. But this is a smaller project, so I like that about it, because I feel like the tank top will totally be a smaller type project. Even once it's bigger, it should be still relatively lightweight, versus granny squares are really little. But once you start assembling everything together and then you're working on a sweater, that's when it becomes a little bit bigger. And right now we're in a heat wave and it's just sweltering. And the last thing I want to do is work on a sweater. So I'm thinking maybe a cowl would be a really great option for me on those days where I don't feel like picking up a sweater. And then the very last thing that I would like to do is work on socks. So I have been finishing up socks. I have a lot of single socks from where I used to do a monthly sock club. So I have a lot of single socks or a single sock started. So I have a ton of sock yarn that that's already wound. Some of them already have one. It just needs the second one. So there's plenty where I could get that gratification of doing one sock because the other one's already done. And there would be no second sock syndrome. So that is an idea. But I also am trying to build up my Christmas sock stash. And last year I did Freckled Whimsy's sorry for the crinkling, Christmas Club sock. I think last year she did Christmas and she did Halloween. You might still be able to get Halloween. But I have like 7 or 8 of those skeins that I have not completed. So I'd really like to, like, this one is called Merry Christmas, Everyone. This one is called Twinkling Tree Lights. This one was called Peppermint Cocoa by the Fire. So they weren't all like Christmas colors. I mean, obviously some of them are, but then some of them were more winter themed. So there were ones that were kind of blue or like this is almost autumnal to me. So I'd like to not necessarily do all three, but I'd like to work through some of those Christmas socks. And socks, of course, are portable. There are small projects that I can take with me if we're going out someplace. Like sometimes we go out and hang out with friends or go to brunch. Or even if I'm sitting around, but the dogs are actively playing. Paisley's still really little at this point, so I still have to supervise play. And a sock is a great way because I can quickly throw it down and not, even if I drop stitches, I'm proficient enough to pick them up and keep going. It's not the end of the world for me. So that is everything that I'm hoping to get accomplished this summer. Socks, a tank top, and a sweater / tee. So if you've used Mojave, I would love to know what your experience was with it. Did you love it? Did you hate it? How does your finished object wear? I'm really excited about using this yarn, and I'm hoping it's a really great top in the end. Like it's a really great summer fiber. If you have thoughts, again, I'd love to know, which would you do with the 4 colorways? Would you do the Fleetwood?
So editing Melissa here. At this point at the end of the video, something happened with my microphone and it went completely static. So I would love to know your thoughts on, yes, the Mojave yarn, but also which would you do? Would you do the Fleetwood sweater? Would you do the Geddy tee? Would you do them both? Would you make changes to one or the other, either in fiber content or changing sleeves? I'm really curious what you think. So until next time, friends, happy knitting.
Always think of you when spring comes, like it's something in the air at that time. Don't know why. Always dream of you when spring comes. It's like the heat